Shimokitazawa, it is an area so synonymous with Japanese music that if you're into Japanese music, you've probably already heard of it. And if you haven't, well, thank you for clicking on this video and watching along, because this is going to be an interesting topic to discuss. Now, Shimokitazawa is an area I know very well myself. In fact, I've just come back from going to a gig there tonight. I am there regularly, and it is an area where I wanted to share some of my feelings about this area, some of the things that I find most interesting. You can already see on the map we're looking at here, we're looking at Google Maps. I've already got some hearts on some of these areas, which is going to make it kind of interesting because I can show you some areas that I have a little bit of personal love for. But there are so many live houses in this small space that, frankly, if you wanted to walk across the whole of Shimokitazawa from one side to the other, I would say 15 minutes would be too much. I think you could walk across the entire thing in 10 minutes. 10 or 15 minutes. I don't know. That would be my prediction. 15 minutes would be the absolute maximum to walk across the entire thing. And yet the number of live houses in this space. Well, I mean, to give you an idea, if I actually type in live house Shimokitazawa, in fact, I did that a moment ago, so I did try record this a moment ago and something went wrong. But so I'm kind of starting again. But yeah, you can see there's a lot. And you might be thinking, wow, that is a lot in a space where, I mean, this is just south of the station, actually. So, I mean, this little space here, and you've got ERA up there. And all of these, you're thinking that's maybe a lot. But even this is betraying just how many there are, because you zoom in on spaces like this and you see Rockaholic is actually on top of another venue. There's two venues which are on top of each other in the same building in there. And then you've got other places like little restaurants and bars where there's music venues inside them. I mean, there's Daisy Bar around here as well. Is that Daisy Bar? Yeah, that's Daisy Bar. So that doesn't even show up as being a live house. That shows up as being a cafe. And yet there's music in there. There's a lot of cafes around here which have stages on them where you can perform. It is genuinely interesting. In fact, I know there's a couple of venues down here that aren't showing up. So, actually, Google's not showing us all of the venues. There are a, frankly, rather astounding number of venues. And okay, that in itself might seem interesting, but there's more to add to that. I mean, another layer that I would add to that is the fact that, frankly, because this area is so synonymous with the Japanese music scene, and obviously, from my perspective, well, I hope from your perspective as well, if you think of Japanese music as being the pinnacle of the music that we're getting in the world right now, I certainly believe that. Look at my YouTube channel. Then, well, Shimokitazawa is the engine room that is powering that. Almost any upcoming band has played in Shimokitazawa, in this tiny little district. Every single band you won't have a single band who's come out of Tokyo who hasn't played at least half their shows in Shimokitazawa, in this tiny little space. You've got bands coming from all over the country who come to Tokyo and play a Shimokitazawa show. At the show I was at today, we had bands who were coming from places like Nagoya and such like, and they were visiting Tokyo just to play in Shimokitazawa. And this is not a hugely built up area. Yes, it is relatively close to places like Shinjuku and Shibuya, but you wouldn't know that if you were there. It looks like a sort of a medium-sized little suburban kind of part of the city. And you might well know that if you've watched the anime Bocce the Rock. Thank you, by the way, to my follower Andy for sending me a little bocce. And Bocce the Rock is set in Shimokitazawa. All of the locations in there are very much true to life. They're shown brilliantly. Even the actual venue, which is the home of the band, which is called it's called The Shelter in real life, but it's called Starry in the anime, so you might know that. I mean, we'll quickly just zoom in on it now. There you go. See, it's another one of those ones that doesn't show up on Google unless you zoom right in on it. But and by the way, again, thank you for the fact this is the Google Images pictures, so I'm using these without any copyright thing. But yeah, so again, this is a venue that's very true to the anime, and it is amazing just how many of these venues are. So a lot of people will be familiar with The Shelter or Starry, but what you might not be familiar with is just the number of other interesting venues. So let's have a little look at some of those. I mean, the first one I'd maybe draw your attention to, one of the very smallest ones, right outside of a station, is this little place called Flowers Loft. Now, I first came to know this one, even though it's right outside of a station, because it was actually through seeing idol shows. It's a very small stage. It looks kind of bigger in this photograph, I must be honest, but it's set into a corner, as you can see there, and the audience stand about 3 people deep, and then you've got the wall behind you. It's a very, very small little venue, And yet it feels so charming when you're in there. You're right up in front of the groups, and then there was a festival recently there as well where I saw some bands on the stage, and it just sort of really reminds you of how up close and personal to bands you can get in Shimokitazawa. But on the other side, if that's one of the smallest venues, you've got Shangri-la on the other side, and Shangri-La is pretty big, if I'm honest with you. I would say it's probably the biggest venue in the Shimokitazawa area. As you can see here, this picture kind of gives you a rough idea. It's pretty huge. And I've seen bands like Neki performing here. Again, it's used when you have a lot of the festivals in Shimokitazawa. And that's maybe another thing I should move on to talking about as well. In fact, I'll get to that a little bit as well, because it's important to point out that you sometimes see fairly well-known bands in Shimokitazawa as well. It's not just the upcomers, because it's so well recognized. A lot of bands, I mentioned Neki, who've obviously, they're quite new, but they've hit quite a lot of success. They're still playing in Shimokitazawa, so you can see a band who've just come from, doing their, they've just written their first couple of songs, and they just come out straight from university, playing a few songs, and then you'll see a well-known band. But for an example, here's Lupinus Festival. Now, Lupinus is a festival that I'm so glad I'm going to be going to on the 20th of March. And it's set in Shimokitazawa over a number of venues. Now, you might have come across this before. Basically a festival that takes up several venues, and effectively each live house acts as a stage. And so you get like a little wristband and you walk around town and you go into whichever one you want. At any given time, and you have a set list of which bands are playing in which venues, and you just walk between them after paying for your day pass, which is as your wristband. Interesting enough, that's the sort of thing what you can get away with doing in Japan, because you can imagine you do that in other countries. If you did that in the UK, where I come from, then there'd be people gaming that system, getting into venues without paying. But in Japan, as a general, people are just... You don't have that problem here. So things like this can work, but it also can work because of the fact that, as mentioned, Shimokitazawa is such a condensed area of live houses that you can literally, and when you go to festivals like this one, you can literally see one band and know, oh, the band I want to see after this one is starting 5 minutes later at another venue. And you can get out the door, go around, go into the next venue, walk in there, and just be seeing the next band at a different venue. It's amazing how convenient it is. So for festivals, Shimokitazawa is amazing, because suddenly all these separate little venues with their own character become this one big smorgasbord of amazing things happening. And just to give you an idea of the Lupinus Festival, this is one of the best ones, but you have all kinds of these festivals happening throughout the year. And I was showing this on my live stream the other day, just the number of bands. We've got bands like Trident, who are definitely... Yeah, I would. You're not going to argue. They're famous. They're famous. They might be Japan famous more than international famous, but they've got a lot of following. You've got bands like Hagane, which have also had a lot of success. Then little upcoming bands like EMNW, who I've been supporting massively. Who I caught them before they even had their first single, and at the moment they've still only got 4 songs total, and their set still contains some rather comical cover songs. They're going to be on the set list alongside, groups like Trident. And you've got, huge bands and small bands alongside each other at these kind of venues. Manatee's going to be there. Rene's going to be there. Bands who I really love. A Girls Fist, who recently found out about. Fantastic group. There's so many of these really cool groups who are going to be at the Lupinus Festival. And for me, this, again, drives home that feeling that this is something that... I'll just give you an idea. This entire festival is 5,300 yen. Plus, you have to buy one drink at the first venue you go into. 5,300 yen. Now, that's more than most live house gigs that are usually about 3,000 yen, but you have access to all of this music for 5,300 yen. This is part of why Shimokitazawa and the festivals it has and the individual shows are just so special. But more than anything, I've talked about, obviously... I've talked about the fact that we have this wonderful area where there's so many live houses. I've talked about the fact that you have such interesting venues that are all so different. I mean, Regbox, I absolutely love this one. It's got like a little disco light in the middle of it. I've seen some really cool everyone always photographs the disco light. Got this disco light in the middle. It's just such a bizarre little venue. That's actually a really good photograph of it. That really gives you a good feel for it. This is behind the mixing desk. But here, for example, this is where the stage is. But it's one of there's only a few venues I've seen that do this. But instead of a curtain, a lot of venues don't even have a curtain. Shangri-La has a proper curtain. Most of them have nothing. It's just an open stage. This is one of the few ones I've seen where they've actually got like a projector screen pulls down, and they will show. They'll just play things on the screen of who's playing tonight. I remember there was one time when Candid, the band who I'm with at the moment, when they were actually doing a gig there. They premiered their new music video on that screen, and then then the screen came up and the band started playing. It's so cool to see little things like that. And a venue like this, which as you can see is not huge, it's got enough room to get a good number of fans in, get a good atmosphere, but it's not huge. It's bigger than Flowers Loft, but it's not huge. Another one, and this is interesting because this is like barely any distance away from Reg Box, is Mosaic. Just up the road here. Mosaic, this is one I was at today. This is really interesting because this is just, it's such a strange little basement room. As you can see there, you get a kind of a feel for it here. You've got these little blocks on the walls and everything. The sound desk is actually up here on the left, like really quite raised up on its own little balcony section. But this venue's awesome as well. Really kind of cool atmosphere. Yeah, you have to go down through this really... this is actually inside the venue. You go in, there's a nice cafe area where you can buy stuff at the bar, buy drinks at the bar. Usually the bands will have their meet and greet desks up there. And from the outside, Mosaic just looks like a normal little cafe. And then there's this little passage at the sideways. You go down to it and it leads you into the main room. Yeah, there's the front. Just looks like a cafe. Looks totally normal. So... Mosaic is another example of a great venue that I really adore. And Pebble's actually a little bar where I've actually interviewed a few people before, so that's cool. I don't even... Wait, what? Fuchi? I don't know that. Oh, it's a live music venue. Have I been there? This is what I mean. I'm actually finding ones where I'm like, have I been to... Oh, okay, yeah. So this is one of the ones that sorry, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but as well as a lot of the live music venues, there'll also be places where it's just like a little cafe and people will play music in there, like a little acoustic stage. So this is one that I went to for an acoustic show. I can't remember which one I saw there. And things like that. It's just so many 251s, brilliant. And all of these venues, that just the ones I just showed you in the last minute or so, you could literally walk between all of them in like 2 or 3 minutes. It's amazing. So this leads us on to the main question, really, of just, okay, so where are we left with this? What is the end result of this? And the end result, in my opinion, is a very simple one. If you love Japanese music, if one of the reasons why you're coming to Japan, or I know maybe you're not, but if you ever want to come to Japan, or if you are coming to Japan, and a motivator behind that is music, you have to come to Shimokitazawa. Now, of course, a lot of people come here to see big name bands, and they'll go see them on a big stage, and that is great. Yes, come and see bands who you love, who inspire you. That's great. But if you're here for even one more day than that, come to Shimokitazawa. Because, you can use the internet and look stuff up if you want, or you could just take the simple approach of go to Shimokitazawa, walk around, go up to any of these venues, see what's on that night, see what time it is, get yourself there maybe in the early afternoon, early evening time, because a lot of the venues start at different times, all the shows start at different times. Have a look, see if there's something you like, and most of these shows don't totally sell out. They have like a nice little bit of buzz, but they don't totally sell out. So you usually be able to just pay for something on the door, go in and enjoy a show. You almost don't have to plan it. That's what's so beautiful. There's a couple of venues where you probably can't do that, like with the Shelter. Ever since Bocce the Rock, it's become harder to get into that. So paying on the door is not so easy, but sometimes you can do it. But most of the venues you can. And what you'll get a lot of these venues is you'll get like a live music night where there'll be maybe 4 or 5 bands on the roster, and you'll get a good experience. Because the other thing that's so important, and again, I think if you follow this channel, you might know this, but I feel it needs to be said anyway, is that even when you see the really new bands, the ones who aren't that great by the standards of the music that maybe we love, they're still a damn sight better than the live music you see in virtually any other country. I'll be watching. There was one of the bands I saw at the show today, Marine Blue Daisy. They're basically a high school band. And I swear, you put them alongside they're a 3-piece high school band. You put them alongside most of the bands who are charting quite well or very successful in, shall we say, another hemisphere. And I'll be like, Marine Blue Days are kind of better than them. So, you know, I just feel like it would be almost impossible to be disappointed. So, yeah, Shimokitazawa it's the home of Japanese music and therefore the home of the best music in the world. But, yeah, it's not exclusive the only place you get Japanese music. But it is the one place which is, it's the home, it's the heart, it's the place you have to go. It is your pilgrimage. And thus, I would wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone. If you want any advice on going to visit Shimokitazawa, I'm always open to helping people. Feel free to contact me, DM me, comment on this video. If you comment, I'll try to get back. I can be sometimes slow with those. But follow our social medias, get in contact. And I hope this has been a little bit of an interesting talk from someone who loves this area, goes there a lot. But either way, I hope that you get to enjoy this little slice of amazing music, the thing that we love. And of course, if you've been there before and you've got any cool stories, feel free to share them in the comments as well. But as I say, if you're coming to Japan, you cannot miss Shimokitazawa. It is the place you need to go. There you go. Those are my thoughts. Get in the comments. Tell me what you think. And until I hopefully see you very soon in Japan for the next one of these. For now, ciao, ciao.